Welcome into the DePaud, a DePaul Hoops podcast brought to you by 199.com. 199.com basketball historians bringing history to life with vintage DePaul basketball gear to make you feel like Aguirre in 79. Go check them out today at 199.com and actually get yourselves ready for the February 14th game at home against St. John's. It's the Billy Blue Demon game. Where the athletic department has a bunch of stuff planned along that line. So make sure you're ready and you show up to that game with that vintage DePaul basketball gear from 199.com. On today's episode of the DePaud, we'll talk a little bit about that UConn game and some of the other games that are upcoming, but we'll also talk about the Seton Hall game on Sunday, especially when we're joined by John Fanta, who's calling the game. He's on the call for that game on Fox Sports 1. So let's jump right into it, Blue Demon Nation.
Got a McAdoo look to his shot.
Spins, fade away. Yes, sirree! Chandler hits the three.
Oh, tough shot. Giving it up to Reed.
Welcome into the DePaud, a DePaul Hoops podcast brought to you by 199. Thanks again for joining me, Blue Demon Nation. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen in and join me on all of these episodes. One thing let's jump into first before we get into our time spent with John Fanta and talking about that Seton Hall game that's upcoming this weekend. Let's talk about that UConn game. DePaul dropped the game 90-76. There were some bright spots. There was times where they got it down to an 8-point game. I think really something that's dropped off that's surprising that we hadn't seen all year is the free throw shooting. They shot 60% from free throw on 28 attempts. So 11 missed free throws, which would have brought, the game up to 90-87, a 3-point game there. So really that's something that's kind of dropped off in the past 3 or 4 games or so, where, DePaul was one of the better free throw shooting teams in the nation early in the season. So wonder what's going on with that. But that said, bright spot being Javen Johnson, 19 points. They did shoot 45% from 3, 9 of 20 from 3, which when DePaul's shooting at that high clip, at that high rate this season, you usually tend to see a little bit more different of an outcome. But they just could not hold off UConn and their inside game, really, and Jordan Hawkins. And, credit to him as well as Andre Jackson. But, there's definitely fight in this team. I think we'll see that over the next coming game. Seton Hall is a very gettable game, given that we lost by 4 last time, and that was one of those games that DePaul should have had. I think inside the program too, they believe that they should have had that game as well. So nothing new there. Then let's look ahead before we jump into the upcoming game against Seton Hall. Let's look ahead to February 14th. Well, first Villanova on the road at Nova. They're pulling out all the stops. They've got Jalen Brunson and Jay Wright coming in for that game. They don't want to lose that game, but the way the teams matched up last time, I think that that's another one. So you could look ahead to next week and potentially have 2 wins or 2 wins before next Wednesday, before you got St. John's coming in as well. So a lot of potential time to play spoiler to get those wins. Especially when you figure you beat Nova once already this year. So let's be positive a little bit. Let's look hopefully ahead to those 2 games and make sure that we take care of business this weekend. And then look forward to St. John's. It's the one game that I think everyone in the fan base is looking forward to. I would probably expect some of the guys on the team that were here last year are also looking forward to that game in Chicago. David Jones will be coming back to Chicago, although probably at a much more limited role than he probably expected coming into the season. So we'll talk about that more down the road here. But let's jump into our talk with John Fanta and talk a little bit about that Seton Hall game. Welcome in to John Fanta, Fox Sports basketball announcer and Fox Sports and college basketball reporter. Thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be with you, John. Great to be with you again, and looking forward to having the Blue Demons on a Sunday at noon. There won't be a ton of college basketball on at the time, so it gives people the opportunity to check out the Blue Demons and Seton Hall with no football either. So the Blue Demons and the Pirates, that's the only Big East game on Sunday after 4 games on Saturday.
Right, and you've got the call, so why don't we jump right in and talk about the game, and what do you think are the keys for the Blue Demons coming off of that 71-67 loss in the previous matchup? What needs to change to turn that corner against the Pirates?
Well, you can't turn the ball over. And they had 15 turnovers against Seton Hall. And in the second half, the turnover problem really mounted because Seton Hall applied pressure. So I think it's really important for DePaul to be able to manage the basketball. In that game, if you look back at that game, DePaul hit 9 3-pointers. And they've typically done well when they've connected on 8, 9, 10 threes. But what ended up going wrong for them in that one was, yet again, they struggled to defend and they struggled to close. And one of the other themes to playing Seton Hall, John, is you can't foul them. You can, but what happened is Seton Hall in that second half, they ended up taking 21 free throws to just 2 in the first half. That's staggering.
Yeah.
You rarely ever see that. A team that shot 2 free throws in one half of basketball, they took 21 in the second half. And then I think it's really important that DePaul keeps Casey and Defo from impacting the game with his physicality.
Sure.
What's been DePaul's biggest issue at times this year, John? Well, by not having Nick Ongenda and by really struggling in the size department, they've allowed teams to really punch them inside.
Sure.
Nadefo is that. He's that type of player, and he makes those types of plays. And Tyrese Samuel as well, who had a dozen in that game. But, I really think it comes down to DePaul defending without fouling. I think they're going to be able to getting transition opportunities is really important against the Pirates. Seton Hall is a defensively oriented team. So DePaul's got to come out. They've got to generate some tempo, and they can't get outmanned inside. They've got to get on the glass. You really have got to focus hard on rebounding the ball, because in that game against Seton Hall, they got out-rebounded 37-27 against a team that doesn't have a true center. You got to rebound the basketball better.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing too is they've got to use their pace. DePaul has been good when they've put the pace up and turn the heat up on the opponent. So using their athleticism and using guys like Deshaun Nelson and guys like Caleb Murphy, who we didn't have in the previous matchup, to push the tempo and really generate driving kicks and also and being active on the boards. So who do you think from DePaul? Obviously 3-point shooting is huge for DePaul, right? Who do you need to see active and early and active to kind of punch Seton Hall in the mouth?
Well, I think DePaul's got bucket getters. There's no shortage of those. And for me, like Javen Johnson is obviously important. He goes for 19 points on 7 of 9 from the floor against Connecticut. But to me, there's something about Umoja Gibson that when he is connecting, when he's in sync offensively, John, because he's that ball handler, because he's a guy that's at the point of this, everything seems to rub off really well for DePaul offensively when he's gone. But then to me, the most important piece of this team, in my opinion, is Deshaun Nelson. Because This is a guy that can go back to the basket, can score in a variety of ways. He is a matchup nightmare. When you have a player on the floor that is a tough cover for an opposing defense, you want to make that defense work. And Deshaun Nelson makes teams work defensively. So he's got to be big in this. He has got to step up and play big boy basketball in this game. They're going to need it. And look, he had 15 points on 6 of 8 from the floor against Seton Hall in the first meeting. He played very well. They need that again.
Absolutely. And I think that when you see Javen and you see Mo, and then you add in Deshaun, I think that's really the three-headed monster that we've been looking for all year to get DePaul over the hump and get them to the win column. Switching gears, who does DePaul have to stop aside from Casey Defo, who you mentioned previously? But who else do we need to look towards to stop in order to come home happy from Newark on Sunday?
Alamir Dawes. I mean, you cannot let Alamir Dawes get open threes. He will make you pay. John, I think he's one of the hottest shooters in the Big East right now. I really do. I mean, what he did at St. John's earlier this week and just turning it on in the second half, knocking down 3 after 3. When you're a good defensive team like Seton Hall is, and literally as I'm talking to you, I'm pulling this up. If we look at what they've done here this season, and you think about what they've been defensively, their adjusted defensive efficiency is 14th in the country. 14th.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
insane.
they're a top 15 defensive team in America. So, on that point, when you're that good on defense, if you get 3-point shooting offensively, good luck to the opponent. Dawes is the guy who opens up the box for Seton Hall and really unleashes their full attack. So you've got to be able to cover him. You cannot let him get open threes. Jameer Harris is another guy. Harris has had ups and downs, John, but it feels like he's starting to come on. And then you can't let Tyrese Samuel come off of screens and roll down to the basket and get open looks for dunks. Like they've got to have better ball screen coverage here on Seton Hall. But more than anything, the way that you play Seton Hall is you got to handle their defensive pressure. You've got to get quality shots. Seton Hall's not a great offensive team. They're not even really a good offensive team. But what they do is they turn your offensive flaws into theirs, into their advantages. DePaul's got to take care of the ball, and they need better from Javen Johnson. Like against Seton Hall the first time around, I talk about Javen and how much he means. Johnson shot 2 of 13 from the floor. That can't happen again. And look, DePaul only lost the game by 4 on a day where Javen Johnson took 13 shots and only made 2. Just cut that in half, Javen.
Yeah, and he's been. I mean, there's some ridiculous stat floating out there too, where DePaul's 8-1 or something of that nature when he's scoring 15 or more points. So he's absolutely the catalyst that needs to spark to see DePaul win and see them turn the corner here. So switching gears, Big East tournament in March. We've got you hosting an event, if you want to talk about that.
Tuesday, March the 7th at the Chelsea Bell on 8th Avenue. Ticket details to come. But we will have a Big East tournament tip-off celebration. We'll have 2 panels starting at 6 Eastern time. Those will run till 7:30. So about 2 40-minute panels with Big East broadcasters, some former players, some coaches that you know of. So we'll have some panels, and then off of that, starting at 7:30, we'll have the panels. Off of that, then it's fan engagement. Grab a beer, have an appetizer. Let's talk Big East basketball at the Chelsea Bell throughout the evening. It's a way to kick off the week. It's a way for Big East followers and fans of different schools to come together. We often see the love on Spaces. Let's do it in person for one night and kick off the week. So I'm calling one and all. If you're a fan of a team, if you're a follower of college basketball, come on over to the Chelsea Bell on 8th Avenue, Tuesday night, March the 7th. Join us for some hoops talk. Join us for a beverage. We'll have a good time.
Sounds good. I look forward to meeting you in person and seeing you there. I'll be there for sure. Thanks again for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time. And until next time, we'll see you Sunday.
John, thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
It's always good to take some time and talk with Fanta, especially about DePaul basketball. I think Sunday is a very gettable game, and I think that, like we said, we have the athleticism to beat Seton Hall on Sunday. You got Deshaun and Javen and Mo and Caleb. If they could all get on the same page, and I'm sure these guys are working hard to do that, Sunday is going to be a good day. And we have a chance to play spoiler and start to get in a groove going into the Big East tournament, and maybe we can make some noise in the Big East tournament. I really wholeheartedly feel that once these guys get back to being on track with each other, like we all expected coming into the season, I think that they can make some noise in the Big East tournament, regardless of what any other national pundit says. Or Big East pundit says. I really think that DePaul could potentially make some noise in the Big East tournament. So with that said, go out on Sunday, punch them in the mouth with your athleticism, take that game at Seton Hall, leave Newark with a W, look forward to Nova, and then come back home for St. John's and get ready, get in the groove for March for the Big East tournament, and get ready to make some noise for that. So thanks again for joining me, Blue Demon Nation. And until next time, go Blue Demons.